Hey guys, it's Stephanie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about how I studied for pharmacology and pathophysiology. For those of you who don't know, I am an accelerated nursing student and our pathophysiology and pharmacology class are all one class that we take over the summer in a matter of like 8 weeks. So it's pretty intense. I do tutor for that class now since I did take it last year, so I wanted to share my study tips in case they help you as well. I do want to just preface this whole video with acknowledging that everybody is different, everybody learns differently, so what might have worked for me might not necessarily work for you, and it's just so important in nursing school to find the method that works best for you and kind of stick with that. So I will be sharing my method and some things that I know worked for other people and for the kids that I tutor, but obviously use the method that works best for you. Also, every professor's teaching style is different, of course. So for example, my professor gave us PowerPoints and study guides to work on. Your professor might do something different, so obviously adjust your study method as needed. So just to kind of start off, my professor in class used PowerPoints. So what I would do in class while sitting through lecture is have the PowerPoint pulled up on my laptop, and I would take notes in the PowerPoint on my laptop during class. Now, I know some kids in my class would print out the slides ahead of time and bring them and handwrite on the slides. For me, I chose a little bit of a different method using my iPad. So you definitely do not need an iPad or an Apple Pencil or anything to be able to be successful in nursing school, and in this class specifically. I have an iPad and an Apple Pencil, so I took advantage of it. So basically, I would download the PowerPoints from my class and I would go through and highlight things as needed. So our professor, for example, this is a medication for diabetes. Our professor was very clear in what exactly we needed to know, which is why I only have some stuff highlighted, and she would put pictures and stuff in here, and then again, I would just highlight. I would just go through these slides sometime after class. It could have been the day after or that day when I got home from class, just frankly depending on how motivated I was that day. I would take handwritten notes on the actual PowerPoints on my iPad with my Apple Pencil rather than handwriting my notes during class. I'm a big proponent of handwriting your notes and reviewing your notes after class because I think it's important to refresh the material. Often this class specifically is very challenging and the material needs to be reviewed more than once before the exam, especially at an accelerated pace where we do 2 or 3 topics sometimes just in one lecture and then are tested every few weeks. So that's how I specifically took my notes in class, and then jumping into a little bit more of how I studied. So like I mentioned, my professor was very clear of her expectations with us of what we needed to know out of the slides, which was great because it made my studying a little more focused because I knew exactly what I had to focus on for a lot of the material. So for the pharmacology aspect of things, so the medications, I did note cards. These are all of my real note cards that I used. I still keep them around to help with the kids that I tutor, and I broke them up by like exam and stuff. And you don't have to do physical note cards. Like I said, everybody works differently. Physical note cards worked best for me because I could take them with me. Not that you can't take like a Quizlet or something with you. You can download the app and stuff, but it was nice. I would just throw these in my backpack and I would just pull them out whenever I had some free time and just flip through the medications. I am a big proponent of color coding your note cards. I've mentioned these pens before in my planner video, I think, and probably some other videos. I talk about these all the time, but I really liked color coding my notes. So I would organize the medications by either class or what disease they were for. It kind of just depended on the exam and what we were being tested on to kind of organize them. And I would color code all of the meds so they would all be a different color in my note cards, and that would help me memorize them a lot easier. Obviously, there's so many medications and only so many color pens, so obviously I had to double up sometimes, but just organizing them by color really helped me because then I could focus on only learning one group at a time based on the color of their note cards. And for those, I would make the note cards as soon as we were done learning the medications. I would make the note cards and then I would review them as I went. So as I added more note cards in, as we did more lectures, it was easier to only have to memorize like 5 or 6 at a time rather than like 50 right before an exam. So not only do I recommend doing note cards and color coding them, but make them as you go. Start studying them as you go, because I think that that would really make it less overwhelming when it comes time to study for the exam. For the pathophysiology section, that's really where I used the notes that I took in class as well as Quizlet. So typically what I would do, like I said, I would rewrite all of my notes in the PowerPoint slides, and I use GoodNotes. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. I use the GoodNotes app on my iPad, and I would favorite all of the slides that I had notes on or that were the most important slides, and I would review them pretty much 2 or 3 times before the exam. So I would flip through all of the favorited slides. I would make Quizlets for terms that I didn't necessarily need like a physical note card for, but was just something I wanted to memorize, and I would basically study that way. I didn't really do anything too crazy intense with this part. I was a biology major in undergrad, so some of it was review, which made it a lot easier on me because it was less work I had to put into certain sections, but there was definitely plenty of it that I was learning for the first time, and the combination of reviewing the slides, handwriting my notes onto the slides, and using a Quizlet for some specific terminology really helped me. Also, one more thing I did want to mention, my professor provided us with practice questions of her own creation before each exam. So I always went over those before the exam. I would go over them with my friends, make sure, like, compare answers, because she never gave us the answer keys to any of them. But if your professor does not provide you with their own practice questions or study guide type things, see if you can find some online. People make Quizlets for this kind of stuff all the time, and one of the things that's most important in nursing school is practice questions, in my opinion, so you can see what kind of questions they can ask, what are the most important concepts, but just even getting a feel for how certain questions might be asked, especially when it comes to medications, can be really helpful as a study tool as well. Also, one of my biggest study tips for nursing school as a whole, I can do a whole separate video on how I studied overall for nursing school, but my biggest study tip overall is to find someone that studies in a similar way as you, or that you enjoy studying with, and study with them. Obviously, if you're an individual learner and you prefer to study by yourself, that's totally different. But I really like to study with someone and talk through concepts and ask questions if I'm not understanding something. They say that some of the best ways to understand if you are learning something is if you can explain it to someone else. So my best friend from nursing school, Hope, and I, we would go to the library, we would take turns for reading over the pathophys slides and explaining the pathophys to each other, and then we would lay out all of our note cards for the medications on a table in the library, and we would pick one and we would basically read everything off of the note card to someone else. So like if I wanted to talk about insulin, for example, I would tell her, okay, I'm going to talk about insulin. She would pick up the note card and I would basically, out of memory, just read off everything on the note card to her. And if I got it all right, then we would take that note card out of the pile. And if I got it wrong, we would leave it back in, but then I had to be the one to answer that one again. And then we would switch. So if I did insulin one day, she would do insulin the next day that we studied together. Also, I know for her, writing out all the medication stuff on a little mini whiteboard really helped her. That didn't really help me specifically, but like I said, everyone is different and you have to find the method that works best for you. But I know that that really helped her, and that was something that made her very successful in the class as well. And going off of having someone to study with, this is not a class that you can cram into like one night or really even 1 week. In my opinion, I think it's really something that you have to study as you go in order to be the most successful. It's a ton of information, and if you're in an accelerated program like me, it's a ton of information in a very short period of time. So you don't really have time to wait around to learn it. Plus, it'll just make it so much less overwhelming if you study it as you go. So like I said, I would review my slides about a day after we went over them, and that's when I would handwrite in all my notes, and then I would make my medication note cards as soon as we were done with that lecture, either that same day or the next day, depending on timing and what else I had going on. And then I would add to those notes as I went. So I always made sure to have reviewed everything at least one time before I went to go study with someone else, because then I knew that I at least had looked over everything and I was at least familiar with the information to then go over it with someone else. Then I knew I was responsible for all the information as well, and I wasn't relying too heavily on my friends that I was studying with to kind of teach me the information, unless it was something I was confused about. And also, one thing I just want to stress before I kind of wrap it all up is get a tutor if that's available to you. My school allows you 1 free hour of tutoring per week included in your tuition per class that you're taking. So it cannot hurt to get extra help, even if it's just to go over material with them or have them help you flip through your note cards and help you memorize the medications. It's an extra person who's already taken the class, who's already been successful in the class, and can give you extra help if you need it. So those are all of my tips and how I studied for my pharmacology and pathophysiology class. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Leave me a comment down below if you have other tips for studying for this class so others can kind of learn from what worked for you as well. And then please subscribe to see more videos from me. So I will see you in my next video. Bye!